take me a little while to figure this out. So the cool thing about this is, so John LaRue said, my machine's not for sale, but I know the guy that bought the underground facility, one city west of here in Boone, Iowa. So he gave me the guy's number, and I called him up, and he said, "Yeah, we have that thing, but we sort of took it apart, and I don't think it." And I don't think it has any. I don't think it has any value. I mean, we tried to sell it for scrap, and nobody wanted it for scrap. So, so these underground facilities are, there's 2 floors. This machine was probably 50 feet underground, and there's two ways to get things. There's 3 ways to get things down there. There's a primary set of steps, which is tough if you're carrying a cabinet like that. There's an emergency set of steps, which is even harder, and then there's like a 20 by 20 shaft that was parallel to the steps, because they knew that they had to get all this equipment and material and stuff down when they were building it. And then there's a electric hoist that you can lower things down, and then go through the blast doors to get it into the space. And John LaRue's building and this one in Boone, Iowa, both have somewhat dodgy electric lifts. They mostly work, but they jam sometimes. And they almost always jam when you have something hanging from them, not when you're trying to roll up the empty cable. So at the end of the day, they took this switch and said, we have to get all the stuff in those cabinets up, 50 feet up, so we can get it out of the building, and that's going to be hard to do, but these relay bars are only 2 inches tall, and they only weigh 10 pounds. So if you take them apart, they're not too bad. The crossbar switches for this switch are kind of so it's an assembly. It's a pretty standard 10 position 6-wire crossbar switch, but then it's got 2 plates of relays that are the line and cutoff and ring detect for 10 lines. So this piece here is the same as that piece down there, and each one of those is connectorized along the side here. So you can expand the switch 10 stations at a time, and it's relatively easy to take one of these assemblies out. It weighs 40 pounds, but you can carry 40 pounds up steps. You can carry 40 pounds across the parking lot. So I went out to pick this thing up, and the cabinet they had gotten up from the lift, it didn't have anything in it. It was still really heavy. And then there were all of these pieces that were about 40 pounds or less. There's a whole bunch of cables that interconnect with this stuff that were they just cut them off because their idea was we want to get rid of this thing. I called them at just the right time before it went into a dumpster. And then I got it home and started asking people if anybody had ever heard of this thing, and I was sending emails out with all of the numbers on these things, and if you look on here, various places, there's these MES numbers, and nobody had not only had nobody heard of this switch, they hadn't even heard of this series of numbers.
Was this recently?
This was maybe in 2008, maybe 2009. So, long story short, Steve Flocky was pretty interested in this thing, and so I said, hey, you're going to come to Lancaster, right? Yeah. Why don't you come like on Monday instead of on Friday, and you can stay at our house and poke around this thing and see if you can figure out what it does. And Steve loves doing that, so he's like, well, I can't come on Monday, but I can come on Tuesday. So we did this for like 3 or 4 years, and I think Steve's 83 now, so he was maybe 75 then. So getting up there, and like on the 3rd or 4th year, he said, I'm not sure I'm going to live long enough to finish this doing it this way. Would you consider sending me the essential pieces of the common control, and then I can work on them at home and see if I can figure out what it does. So I did that. So I made a wooden box up and sent basically these 7 plates to Steve, and then he spent weeks and weeks and weeks tracing out every wire.
Oh.
And then denoting like the resistance of every relay and the contacts, and put together a set of schematics, and then figured out how it worked, and then I didn't send him one of these Crossbar 10 station units, but he had some Crossbar switches, so he was able to simulate that. And he said, I think I have it working. So we went to and this was in the course of I think I sent it to him around Christmas time, and there was a TCI show in Mason, Michigan, like in April or May, I think, the following year. And are you gonna go, John? Yeah, I'm gonna go. Well, I'll bring this thing, and then we can move it from my trunk to your trunk, and then you can take it home and try to hook it up. And so, long story short, brought it home. Did a lot of wiring to make it to interface with all these things, and got it working. And then about 3 or 4 years after that, Wayne Merritt, who's associated with the JKL Museum, called me up and said, "Hey, John, you're never going to guess what I found." And I said, "I know exactly what you found." "No, you don't." I said, "You found the schematics for that intercom." "Yeah, how did you know that?" I'm like, "I can tell by the excitement in your voice." So he said, "Hello?" "No, not yet." "Yep." "Okay, bye." So he said, if you want, I'll send them to you. You can make copies and send them back. So I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. So I got the copies, and I'm thinking, I know I have to give these to Steve, but is Steve going to be happy, or is he going to be pissed off? So I was thinking about it for like a day. It's like, just you're not going to figure it out until you call him. So hey, Steve, I just got copies for the dial intercom. "Oh, that's great. How soon can you get me a copy? I want to see how close I was." So he was delighted. The original machine, as I got it, had 2 what they call register links. That's the essential common control, and and this is one of them. And there's 5 plates of relays in a register link, and the way it's constructed is there's bars back here behind these plates that Western Electric often put in place if you had a circuit assembly that was 3 plates or 4 plates high. You could put these mounting bars to hold them together and then install that as a unit. And they did that with 5 bars as well. So the unit that I sent to Steve, they didn't cut all of the horizontal wires between plates 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 5. But on the first one, they cut all of those wires. So a much bigger effort to fix that. And for years and years and years, I thought, someday I'll get around to doing that, and I'll make that second half work. But like 3 years ago, I'm like, I know I'm not going to do that. I have way too many projects to do, and having like a redundant register link is just not that important to me. So I started asking around to see if anybody was interested in taking on a massive construction project. And last year, I met Eric Salter from near the Illinois-Iowa border, and he's like, yeah, I'm definitely interested in doing that. So I gave him the other register link and a couple of crossbar switches during June. And in September at the Mattoon show, we went to visit him, and he had his machine working. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see if I can get this to actually do anything. So that phone is 11.
Yep.
And it doesn't sound like it's doing anything.
No. Now it works.
There you go. Hello.
Hello. Works.
But as you heard and kind of saw, it really happens fast. Let me see if it'll work again.
Yeah. Is that this one?
Yeah. Yeah, I hung up.
Oh, okay. Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
So
Can I call back to that, or?
Yeah, I don't think that's actually 21. I think that might be. Well, let's see. Try. Well, it might be 10. Try 10.
Okay. I love your dial tone. Like this one. I don't think so. I just hear puttering.
Okay. You know what? Let me try 2-1. Okay, that works.
Yep.
So, yeah, to me, it's pretty cool, and I'm glad that I have it, and I want to get it working right. But
Yeah.
it's pretty hard to explain what it's doing because it does it so fast, and it's kind of like the A&I. I mean, it makes a lot of neat noises, but I mean, without sitting down for days or weeks or months studying the circuit to understand what in the world it's trying to do,
Right.
it's sort of hard to follow it. So it's for me it's sort of a mixed bag.
But one of these units alone would be sufficient to operate like just a PAX on its own,
So you need
or
you need you need everything in this rack, and you need one of these 10 station units.
and then which tone plant is it using? Is it just using your main tone plant, or
It's using a special one that was developed for this. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it was developed for this system, but I think it might be similar to one that was used in like 756 PBXs, but you know it's using this solid state tone plant down here. This is the interrupter that it uses, just a giant relay divider, which actually I don't like. I generally like the sound of relays, but just having it sit there, clicking and clocking all the time when it's not doing anything, is to me somewhat annoying. I did add a so it has a couple of sort of interesting things. So this was for operating this underground hardened facility, and the basic idea, I guess, was people are troubleshooting something in this massive area, so somebody that's where the L5 carrier stuff is needs to talk to somebody that's at the multiplexer, who needs to talk to somebody that's at the switch, who needs to talk to somebody at the MDF to figure out why this phone won't ring. So they have this capability of so we had like 11 talking to 21. If this was working completely right, either one of us could flash our switch hook and dial another number and bring somebody else in, and then any of those three people can flash their switch hook, and you can pull 15. I think it says you can pull in 8. I did 15 one time at my other house when it was working better. The other thing it had which is pretty interesting is it had this pretty elaborate public address paging zoning idea.
oh,
So
okay.
there's like 7 or 8 paging zones, and then there was like a page everywhere code that you could dial. I've seen.
Do you have it hooked up to a public address unit? Or
No,
speakers?
I modified the paging trunk so that it's a outgoing trunk, so that I had it hooked up to CNET at the other house. So you could dial 9 and then get on an FXS port on my channel bank, and then dial a CNET number, or dial back into the step switch. Paging is not something that I really have much of a use case for, so didn't really worry about that too much. But it's it's a pretty neat system. What time is it? It's 12:39. So I think Paul is interested in getting together for lunch. So I should probably give him a call pretty soon and see where he is on the hunger scale. I don't know where you are. I'm getting ready for lunch.
Yeah, that would be good. So it can handle all of these lines, right?
Yes. So yeah. So a couple things I didn't point out. So this system has 20 stations on it, and and each one of the 10 lines is associated with a vertical in the crossbar. And have you looked at a crossbar in person?
I don't think so.
Okay. So let's flip this around a little bit. I had people explain this to me about 30 times before I actually saw it. But so the basic idea with crossbars is that you have these select magnets that are that control the horizontal, and then you have these hold magnets that control the vertical. So if I let's see, let's do this one. That's Jim Day. I'll just let it ring. So there's 10 relay coils here that can move these that together can move these 5 bars either up or down. And let me do this a couple times. Okay, so if I operate this select relay, you can see that there's little spring fingers or move up out of the way, right? And then if you look up here, you'll see if I operate the hold, it's gonna close those contacts, right? And then I can release the select, and as long as I keep the hold relay operated, it's gonna close all those contacts. And then if I was to do something similar, where I go over here and operate that select and that hold, it closed those sets of contacts, right? And on the back, you'll see that there's all this banjo wiring that ties. It's hard to see because I pack things all over the place, but there's all this horizontal banjo wiring that
Are those
ties
the steel rods?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in that situation that I just showed you, that would connect those two stations together. The tip rings and sleeves of those two stations would be tied together on that horizontal cabling, and that's how you talk then across the switch. So with what I have here, there are 20 stations, and there can be 8 unique conversations going on at the same time. If you do that conference thing that I was talking about, that just constitutes a single connection, and you just keep bringing more and more stations onto that horizontal multiple.
Okay.
So it's not quite a non-blocking 20 station intercom, because you can only have 8 conversations. So it's really only 16 phones can be in use at one time. But it's pretty close. It's pretty high. That's pretty high capability through a relatively small switch.
So are these for trunks?
Yes. Yeah. Those are that's where the outbound to the CNET trunks will go.
Okay. So how does the wiring on something this compare to a step setup? Because it still looks like a lot here for...
Yeah. You have... well, it's a lot of it's reduced. So you have the line, the equivalent of the line and cutoff relays are on the crossbar assembly. I don't want to call it the crossbar switch, because this piece with these 5 bars is a crossbar switch. When you add these two relays, that make these two plates of relays, that makes it unique to this system. But there's a lot of wiring that is done at the factory for 10 stations that you don't really have to worry about. Whereas in step, you would have to, if you added connectors, you would have to do all of those additional wires. Whereas this, you don't really have to. So there's there's really 100 wires that connect the crossbar switches and the line circuits to the common piece. I think in the documentation that Steve gave me when he traced out the register link, I think there's something like 400 or 500 individual wires that make up all the internal wiring of that. Which, number one, 500 wires is a lot of wires, but 500 wires isn't a lot of wires compared to 10,000. So, it sort of depends on what your frame of reference is, I guess. Let's see. Let me give Paul a call.